And here, in his natural habitat, a shy and very retiring wildebeest has his lair.
Good evening. Welcome to the home of model railways in Daventry.
I don't know what to say now.
Well, James, welcome to my shed and my den, and where I come and hide from the real world and escape to build my models, drink some fine wine, and just be me.
Oh, well, you knew I'd come if you mentioned wine.
I'm very pleased that you perform to form.
Right.
What do you think of this one, by the way?
It's not bad at all, actually.
That's it. It's a Viergelegen state wine from Stellenbosch. It's a Cabernet Sauvignon Merlot blend, so basically a Bordeaux by any other name. As you can taste, it's a good full-bodied wine, quite smooth. It's got that sort of real strong, sort of proper South African wooded wine. You know, barrel. It's been in the barrel. You can taste that, but it's lovely and smooth. And there's, you know, it. I can tell you now, James, it goes down extremely well.
I know. I'm looking forward to having some more in just a second. As soon as I'm off camera. Right. So, as Terry said, I'm James, and Terry and I have been friends for far too long. So, what we want to do is to just introduce Terry to you. And Thunderbolt models as well. So, Terry, tell me about how you got into everything.
Well, my old man, when I was 9 years old, decided that my brother and I needed to be introduced to model trains, because he felt that you can't be a gentleman unless you have a hobby. And he himself is a philatelist. And he got us into model trains. I think secretly he wanted the model railway for himself, but he got us the traditional Triang Princess Elizabeth with 2 maroon coaches. We've got a beautiful Hornby Dublo station building, the glass roof one, and we got the engine shed, the Hornby Dublo engine shed with the extension. We had enough track to run two circles. We had a Winston Churchill. We had an 8F, and it just grew and grew and grew, and I got absolutely absorbed with it. The following year, funnily enough, he introduced us to military modelling, and through Airfix, which my brother got very, very into, and Marty took over that, and we swapped, and Marty got all the military modelling stuff, and I got the model train stuff, and both of us are still complete die hard in our hobbies. I love model trains. I can't put a complete finger on it why I'm so obsessed with it. Martin's the same with his military modelling, and the old man introduced us to that. And you know, over the years, you go off and do things, and it goes up and down. But we are solidly. I'm still solid. I mean, I'm 62 now. And I'm still just as obsessed, if not worse, than I first was.
Brilliant. I mean, I have to say, you don't look a day over 70.
I know. But you've got to look at it this way. And no, I can't avert. I built this den off the legacy of my late mother-in-law, who had bequeathed me a lump of money to build something like this so that I could escape. Dale Hayes, who's my neighbour, and part of the same model railway club, we used the thing that you could entertain in the garden, and we sat in here drinking red wine, and through a fantastic number of glasses of red wine, we came up with starting Thunderbolt models, first with an eBay shop, and then once COVID it started relaxing and we could get out to model railway shows, we started with a stand on the model railway circuits, and then the other guys joined, yourself, David and Jim, and we then chose to open the shop in Coventry Market, in the lockup where we're at, you know, that shop that is clearly shown on our website.
Now, I've looked at the as a shop, and I see a lot of different influences in it. I mean, there are the boards as if it was a countryside station, and I certainly remember all of those on the stations when I was little.
Well, being Coventry, we decided to put up the Valencing so that it could mimic a London London North Western Railway station, because Coventry was one. So the Valencing, the guys from Elcut Creative produced for us on 12 inches to the foot scale.
That's Jacob, isn't it?
Yeah, that's Jacob.
Yeah.
Jacob did that for us, and so the idea is that the shop almost looks like one of the little station buildings that you would have found on any one of their stations. And yeah, it's that's the concept behind it.
Right. So there's a lot more of the early stuff, and lots of stories I know that you've told me, etc. But for the sake of other people, tell us about South African Railways and you.
Well, when I finished school early, because school and myself were not that compatible, my dad used his contacts to get me an interview with the South African Railways to get an old-fashioned 5-year indenture with the railways. I passed my entrance exams, and I got offered the post as an apprentice mechanical fitter in Salt River Works on steam to start off with, and went down to what they call the White House and the apprentice school within the works, just short of shop number 1, I think it is, where the steam shop was. And at that time, GM AM Garrett's and the Class 25 condensers were going through their last refit, and Mr. Wardale was busy working on the Class 26, the Red Devil, and producing what was effectively the last produced steam locomotive for the South African Railways. And that's where I started. I interrupted my apprenticeship to go and do my national service, and then came back and ended up, the steam was gone, and we were then all transferred to other depots, and I ended up at the electrical running sheds at Coburg Road. But my pedigree in South Africa is railways. My uncle, my mother's brother, was ended up as the principal of Ashland Park, William Smith. And my grandfather, my mother's dad, was a section plumber for 47 years on the South African Railways, ending his time in Salt River Works.
Wow.
Okay, so really 3 generations of South African railwaymen. I can't really put my marker down, because I did 9 years with the South African Railways, and in 1989 I put my tools down to come to the United Kingdom and reset my life and things like that.
Yeah.
I found out that I had an ability to sell, and switched careers and used the change of countries to do that, but never lost my love and desire for railways and interest in South African Railways.
So am I right in saying that you, if I've got the term right, you got your ticket?
I have got my ticket, yes.
Okay, so you are qualified to hooliganise railways.
Yes, I qualified in 1984 after doing my trade test.
Right.
I passed my trade test first time, which then meant I could come out as out of my time early, and my indenture was then set aside, and I was then a qualified fitter on the floor of the workshops, basically a journeyman.
Right.
And I worked as a journeyman on the floor over that period of time in the electrical running sheds, working on the 5M2A motor coach sets, the 4M1s and the 4M2s. I also worked on 5Es, 5E1s, 4Es, which is just one of my favourite electrical locomotives. It's just an absolute beast. I worked on the 80s when they came in. And yeah, absolutely fascinating. You know, it was a fascinating place to work. Very heavy work. You know, the lifting shops were huge. But I did most of my time on the South African Railways working in the running sheds.
So you haven't had a chance to work with trains since?
Well, no, I started through just a crazy inquiry, ending up going down to the Welsh Highland Railway at Dinas and get involved in the NG15 project, which were 2-footers.
Right.
Because the Welsh Highland Railways have a number of South African NGG16 Garretts. They also bought 2 NG15s. One is a complete basket case, and the other one, they've actually almost got it ready to go back into steam. I did some time working on that, thoroughly loved it. I also had the fantastic privilege at that time to assist the guys working with K1, the first ever Garrett made, which is now at Stadtvoldbahn. I did some work on that, namely in the cutting the crowns off for the retubing of the boiler on that. But absolute privilege, absolute fun. I plan to get down to Wales before they get the old girl, the NG15, or Kalahari as it's affectionately known, into steam. Because I'd love to just say, yeah, I'm part of that project.
Great. Now, I've heard you talking about, and I don't know what they mean and what the difference is, E1s and E. And you showed me 2 models, and you said that one was right and one wasn't, and the other one that was right wasn't totally right, etc. So have you found that your background with the working on the trains themselves has helped you with the modelling? And would you then say that there is a crossover between the two?
Well,
now that's a cut.
Yeah, my interest in model trains and then getting interested into using my experience in real life railways to affect my interest in model trains didn't initially really happen. I mean, because my father was from England, he brought us up really with wanting to model British outline stuff. But because I was working in the South African railways, I kind of got interested in it, but never really pursued it, namely because there was a lack of models and my skill hadn't developed at that time. But I had at that point bought this book through the model railroad specialist in Plumstead called Locomotives of the South African Railways, a concise guide by Lee Paxton and David Bourne, which actually it became the concise Bible for anybody who wanted to know. Obviously, since then, more locos have been added to South Africa's rolling stock, but especially the early stuff, etc., etc. Once I'd come to the UK, I started looking at different options, realizing that I had a South African heritage and a South African feel. I decided to look into how I could model South African railways. Funny enough, I first wanted to see about modelling the standard gauge railway, or the 4-foot 8.5 inch gauge that was in the Cape, from Cape Town to Wellington and down onto the Wynberg branch. But there was very little information on that and not enough for me to really get involved. And I came across a guy called Bruce Green online, and Bruce is one of South African modelling fraternity's great characters. He's a bit of a Marmite fellow. You either liked him or you didn't. But Bruce, for some reason, shared a huge amount of knowledge with me and got me into looking into the narrow gauge side, the 2-footers of South African railways. And so I got into it in a basic that I started to start learning to scratch build or kit bash or find out what there was. And just outside Cape Town at a place called Hopefield, there was a 2-foot gauge line from Kalibaskraal via Hopefield to Hocheley's Bay. Hocheley's Bay today is Saldanha Bay, and from up until 1926, I think from 1902 to 1926, that was a 2-foot gauge line. It only had effectively 3 Baldwins to start off with, 2 6.0s. So I kit bashed the Bachmann Baldwin and turned it into a 2.60. I put outside frames on it. The scale is ON30, but it gave me basically the loco that it was used on that line. My idea is eventually to actually model that line in 7mm to the foot scale. So it's O scale running on 2-foot gauge. I've allowed poetic license. I'm not going to go and use 14mm gauge track because it's just a waste of time really and too anal. I'm just going to use 16.5mm. It means I can use ready to run chassis. I can use bogies and wheels that I've all produced already. But I've produced things. Wolseley Works produces etched brass coach sides for the early South African Cape Government Railway coaches. So I've used their brass sides, and I've made myself a set of South African Cape Government Railway coaches. I've got enough there. I've got enough stuff to build 6 of them. And then on the Avontuur line, using a van that was brought from German Southwest Africa, the South Africans produced a brake van, and only one of this type. And I've made a model out of it using McDonald's coffee stirrers and plastic card and bits and pieces, and produced a model of that particular brake van. I've also produced the bunk car using one of the old standard covered wagons, and that was used for the permanent way staff out on the 2-foot gauge lines. Again, I've made a scratch built open wagon that a number of these were brought from German Southwest Africa into South Africa. They were converted, rebuilt, and ended up on that system. So my kind of secret passion is to one day have a 2-foot gauge line. On the normal standard stuff in HO, yes, Lima produced some stuff. The locos, the 5E that they produced, is it a 5E? Is it a 5E1? Well, to be really honest, it's neither. That's how wrong it is. The Trans Karoo coaches they produced are pretty accurate. The first set had the wrong bogies. The second set they brought out with Commonwealth bogies, which made it pretty good. The 5M2A set, it's a damn good possible model as an HO. It's got a couple of faults. The good old diehards will want to say, oh, it's missing this, it's missing that. But I worked on them, and when I look at it, to me, I recognise the 5M2A when I see it. Lima also produced a fantastic Class 34 diesel, which is pretty sound. They produced a rake of wagons, some good, some not. They do look a little bit strange because of the gauge. 16.5 mil is a little bit wide because South African standard gauge is 3'6". So again, the diehards are modelling on 12 mil track. It looks far more convincing. But again, you then have to put a hell of a lot of work in to bring it into some sort of working, easy to scale. So there's nothing that's just straight out the box. And but on doing that, once we started Thunderbolt models, I decided that after chatting with the lads, that we would set out our stall as a shop to have our sort of unique selling point is to stock South African outline models. I've got to say it's an uphill battle because not all the producers of anything out there can see the bigger picture and want to grow the market. They just want to sell to the existing market, and they don't realise that you actually have to invest in developing that market and bringing others who are not into South African modelling into the fold. And without a ready supply of reasonably priced locos, that's not going to happen. Okay, all you'll do is sell outline stuff to different providers. Different customers that are there, and eventually that will dwindle and it won't be there. Where what we need to actually do is develop new guys into the hobby who want to model South African railways. And there is a following. A lot of these locos were made here in the United Kingdom. So there is an interest in colonial railways and that. And South African railways was huge. Although it was narrow gauge at 3'6", it was run as a standard gauge, major first class outfit. In the world, it was a railway that had more garrets than any other railway ever. Over 2,600 garrets, I think, were employed on the South African railways over the history of the South African railways. It was one of the earliest railways to electrify its main line, and it has an amazing history for innovation. The Class 26, which was the last steam engine to build for the South Africans, used Porter's inventions and ideas to produce one of the most steam efficient locomotives ever produced in the world. But it came too late for steam. Yeah.
Great. So, is there anybody, and what providers would you recommend, or that you're impressed with, when it comes to South African model railways?
Well, on that basis, James, we look at who actually is prepared to engage with the market, and we go from that point, because I think that's the fairest thing to say. On the 7mm side, Wolseley Works produce the scratch builders aids. We don't stock Wolseley Works in Thunderbolt models, but their stuff is pretty good. You know, it needs a bit of work, but it's convincing enough so that you can get going in the narrow gauge stuff. But in the standard gauge stuff in HO, we've got involved with CMD models, and Craig of CMD models is able to think out the box, and he does see the need to develop this market. Okay, but he himself is ploughing his furrow for many years on his own, and he produces a fine range of wagons and has produced a couple of locos in his time. But that's part of his collection series, and we at Thunderbolt Models stock his collection series in the shop. These are absolutely fantastic models. You know, it's at 16.5mm gauge, HO models, but he does produce 12mm bogies, so that you can actually bring it to looking at scale. These models will be finished. They'll have all the detailing. It will have the vacuum pipes, everything. All you need to do is put couplings on, either the similar to Lima or the KD couplings onto that, which are very similar to the South African Buckeye couplings. So they're pretty good. We carry that range of stock. We also carry his Hobby Line series, which is a lot cheaper. It's the basic model without the detailing. So you still need to put the brake wheels on, the steps, the couplings. Sorry, I'll give you a good picture of it there. These are some of the wagons that he produces, and he produces a good range of open wagons. He produces the grain wagons and some flat cars and container wagons. He produces them both in South African Railway colours, Transnet and Spoornet. Okay, so that you can model in from going back into the 40s right up until the modern day. His stuff is pretty good and actually very, very reasonably priced and accurate, very accurate. Then we stock a fine range of buildings that are produced, they laser cut HO buildings produced by Model Railway Specialist in Plumstead. And we carry their full range. So there's Fischhoek Station, there's a small town, a small dorp shop. We produce a small station shop. They produce the whole lot, and we carry everything they do. Even their new products that they do. They do a fantastic Cape Farm homestead, the wine cellars, the foreman's house, and the workers' cottages. And I've taken one of the workers' cottages and I've built it. And I used Scenic City, which is a range of products that we have at Thunderbolt Models, corrugated iron, to use on the roof. So it gives it a really authentic looking building. They're very easy to build, great fun to build actually. And watch this space, because I think we'll end up with a little layout or diorama from that. Then another company that we've started stocking and we've stumbled across is a Polish company, but its pedigree is South African. The guy who runs it, Martin, is actually a Zimbabwean, and he then went to South Africa and now is in Poland with his wife, and they produce a range of South African HO resin kits. He also produces a catenary kits for the South African overhead wires in the system, and they are excellent, and they're all on our website. You're at www.thunderboltmodels.com, and you can see them as well. And then through the model shop in Plumstead, we have started becoming stockists of this range of products, model scene, and they do accessories like signals, water cranes, the what do you call those things? The water pump, the little windmills, the farm dam or plaasdammetjie as we call it in South Africa, and all sorts of accessories. They do aloes, vineyards, all the bits and pieces to make a South African layout look more and more authentic. And we're starting to carry those. And then another product that we've brought in that is so useful to modelers, especially South Africans, because they have to do a lot of things themselves, is we've got this range of embossed card, okay, which is effectively a wallpaper that has had brick or stone printed on it, which gives it that 3D feel. This is produced by a company in Greece. We carry their full range in HO, from arches to brick to cobbles to even water scenes, that is used this feel of the ripple on the paper to give it this feel of depth in the product. And we carry that. We carry the glues and goos, paints, tools, you name it, we carry it at Thunderbolt Models. We carry a full range of Pico track, from Flexi Rail to Set Track to Slipstream. You want it in code 75, you want 12mm, you want O gauge, we carry it. And if we haven't got it, guys, we can get it.
So what specific problems do you see for everybody modelling South African railways?
Well, if they're modelling in the HO world, it's choosing which gauge to use. Do they use 16.5mm rolling stock, or do they actually re-gauge to 12mm? And that's really getting the accessories to be able to do that. I mean, CMD models do stock the bogies, and they bring them out on a regular basis. And they've promised me that there's a fantastic batch on its way out to help support that part of the modelling fraternity. But the big one, James, is the key one is locomotives. Ready to run, reasonably priced locomotives. I mean, Frascati make a set of diesels. They've basically pirated some existing locos that are of the same manufacturer, thus representing the class. They are slightly too big, but only ever so slightly. But they are convincing models of that. But the guy who worked with Frascati to do that has basically secured that part quite fairly because he invested in it. But it needs to be made more readily. They're very, very reasonably priced, and they're there to be used. There's another couple of manufacturers out there, but they're very much doing their own thing in their own space. Craig has produced with CMD models a couple of locos. He produced a kit as well, and it will be interesting to see if we can convince CMD models to produce a couple more locos to feed and help grow the scale and the modelling of South Africa. It's always going to be locomotives.
Yeah.
Because rolling stock, there's a lot of good pre-owned stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there that can get on. Craig makes a real amount of wagons that are readily available, and they're there. So yes, there's a good platform to start from. It will be seeing as it grows and there's a bigger interest in it, who comes into the hobby. I mean, who comes into the hobby as a manufacturer and produces what? Will people have the vision to say, I mustn't just keep this for myself, but let's start developing other key distributors worldwide, so other hobby shops, to be able to sell manufacturers' stuff, realizing the commercial side at the same time as producing a growth in the interest. If you take the United Kingdom, there's some 500,000 South Africans, or people who link to South Africa, living in the United Kingdom. In amongst there has to be an interest in the South African modelling scene. And it would be lovely to see, just from my own point of view, out of pure nostalgia,
So what you're saying, if I understand it, is that the models or the engines are there, and they are of a quality that is really worth buying, but they haven't really quite worked out their distribution.
Yes, it's because in quite a lot of the cases, it's a cottage industry, so it's one or two people producing locos at different places in the globe to a number at a level for what they feel are those who have a direct interest. Because they're selling to people who are existing South African model railway
Right.
people. So they're selling to existing market,
Yeah.
which is small. So they're not going to produce mass run of things.
Yeah.
Fashati is different because they're a proper outfit in Brazil, and they don't just make South African railways. They do Brazilian railways, they do North American railways. So they're a far bigger shout. DJ&H made a series of white metal kits in the steam locos, which a company called Precision Scale in South Africa have the sole distribution rights. And I can understand that too. I mean, they are fine models, but they are very pricey. And they are, you're talking a really, really high quality model kit. White metal, beautiful model that these guys are producing. There's a couple of guys who produce the steam locos in resin base running on different chassis and pretty convincing as well. But again, they are small suppliers and manufacturers.
Yeah. Now I've got to just interrupt you there because I'm conscious of the time, etc., and we need to start winding up. So, is there anything else that you would really like to say to everybody out there?
Well, my view is it's. I think there is scope for South African modelling. Thunderbolt Models will do its damnedest to support that where we can. It's not our main part of our business. We are very much into the British 00 scene. Why? Because it pays the bills. It sells a lot. I myself model 7mm narrow gauge, but I also model O gauge, and I'm in British outline. And we will Thunderbolt Models will stock more and more of that sort of stuff. But because those is where the bills are paid. But yes, I would like to support the South African modelling scene. I would like us to be known as the model shop in the United Kingdom for this, and we're open to hear from any manufacturer or supplier who wants to distribute their products into the British market. They've got to realise that we're a small player, and we are there. We're very keen. We're very helpful. We've got, amongst us as members of the team, we've got years and years of modelling experience. And at the end of the day, it's about having fun. And we want to encourage people to have fun while they're having their modelling.
Well, look, Terry, thank you very, very much for all your time. He ended with a business opportunity for everybody. What more can you ask for? But if you have any queries or questions, or you just want to find out a little bit more, then look us up on Facebook, or alternatively, just Google Thunderbird Models, because you will find
Thunderbolt,
us.
mate.
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt Models. Thunderbolt Models.
Okay, we'll just do that bit again.
Yes.
Go. So I'm going to have to cut you off there. I'm really sorry to do it, but I'm conscious of the time and we have got to finish fairly shortly. So Terry, thank you very, very much for a lot of information and a lot of knowledge freely given to people. And not only that, but a potential sales opportunity for anybody who's watching. Now, if you want to talk to us, or you would like to find out more, or you're just nosy and you'd like to see a little bit more about what we do, then you can find us at Thunderbolt Models on Facebook, or alternatively, you could Google www.thunderboltmodels.com. And thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, and cheers.
Where's the wine?